Today we're studying a version of the Bible that seemed to me just to come out of nowhere. Okay, it's been out quite some time. It's been out since 2001, but as far as the Church of Christ is concerned, it seems like it just came out of nowhere. One day I saw this individual with his version, and I said, "What do you got there?" And he told me, and I said, "Where'd you get that?" I haven't even heard of this version for a long period of time, and now it's beginning to permeate the churches of Christ. It's kind of almost, many members of the church have gone to the New King James, and now there's many individuals who are leaving the New King James and are now grabbing on to this particular version, and that version is the English Standard Version. Okay, the English Standard Version. So that's the one that I want to spend a little bit of time and talk to you about. Okay, and hopefully you'll find the things that we talk about somewhat interesting. Notice the very first point there. The idea of the ESV originated in the early 1990s when Lane T. Dennis, watch this, president of the nonprofit book publishing ministry Crossway Bibles, discussed the need for a new literal translation of the Bible. Wow. Who is this guy? He's a publisher. Now guys, the only reason publishers want to publish anything is to what? Make money. Okay? We're going to come back to this point a little bit later on in our notes, okay? But I just find it's interesting. Remember the last version that we talked about, even the New King James Version, it was Thomas Nelson who wanted to publish that particular version of the Bible, okay? And there's always this, what do they say? This need for a new version, right? Man, needs for a new version. It just blows my mind. The ESV was translated by over 100 scholars. There was an oversight committee of 15 members, and also there was a review committee of 50 members. So once they got it all translated, it went through the review committee of 50, then it went to the oversight committee of 15 others, okay? So supposedly it has been well reviewed and well looked at and well studied before it was brought to the market. It was based on the Revised Standard Version, okay, of 1951. Now, was there a new Revised Standard Version? Anybody know? Yes, there was a new Revised Standard Version, okay, even after the RSV came out, and then they base another version on the what? On the RSV again, okay? And so it's one that they basically updated, although they did go into the Hebrew, and they did go into the Greek, and they did go into the other newer discoveries since the last ones came out, which have been very minor, folks. Okay, they haven't found many new discoveries of manuscripts within the last few years. When was the last huge discovery? Anybody know? That really radically changed the way folks looked at translating and things. It was the Dead Sea Scrolls, okay, back in the 50s. Okay, so it's been a long time since we've had just a major find of any kind of manuscripts or things of that nature. Notice point D, the translators used what they call the formal equivalence translation philosophy. The philosophy seeks as far as possible to capture the precise wording of the original text and personal style of each Bible writer. Okay, so that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Okay, and the question that we'll have to ask is, did they do that? Right? Did they do that? So we'll look at that a little bit as we go as well. The ESV was released in 2001. It was then revised in 7, 11, and 2016. Now, question. Is there any problem with that? When there's a revision? Okay, Brett says, could it get further from the truth? Possibly, right? And I have to be very careful in my review so that I tell you where I find this. Because is this coming from the 2001 edition, the 2007, 11, or 16 edition? Okay. I got the 2012. Okay, that's the one that I'm reviewing. That's the one that I have. Well, I've got two in my library, but this is the one that I'm using. 2000. What did I say? 2012 edition. Yes, ma'am. Yes. She said, do they have a reason why they find a need to revise in 15 years? There's several different reasons that they give. Okay, one of them is scholarship. Okay, they've done some more study, they've done some more research, and they find that there's some nuances of text that need to be changed. Perhaps there may have been some new manuscript evidence that was found, okay, and that would necessitate a change. And then they want to make certain that they keep up with all the significant changes in the English language. I don't know about you, I've been speaking English since 60. I guess that's when I said mama for the first time, okay? And it hasn't changed that much, okay? But that's one of the points that they do make. Notice this next point. I thought this was interesting. In August of 2016, an announcement was made to have a final revision of the ESV. And it was to be called the permanent text of the ESV, okay? Now, we laugh at that, but they did that with the King James Version. Okay, guys, you're never going to see an updated version of the King James Version. They made a permanent text. I'd have to go back and look at the year. It was a long time ago. I think back in the 1800s, and it's not changed since then. Okay, because of this very problem. You know, you just keep putting out edition after edition after edition, and you got 5 editions of the what? Of the ESV. You go, okay. New King James has gone through some revisions. Okay, we talked about those in our last lesson. A month after they made that announcement, they had come out with their new revision. Notice what it says. It says that they had revised 52 words and 29 verses in the new revision. And that's when they said, okay, this is the last time we're going to do this. Well, they came out a month later and said, nope, that's not the last time. Now remember, they're a publishing company. Folks, if you're going to put out a permanent text, then guess what's going to happen? It never changes. Once I got it, right? I don't ever have to buy it again because I got it. See, they cut their sales off, and cut our sales off. We can't do that. Okay, we got to have these revisions, and they give some reasons there as to why they are going to revise the text. Okay, and those are the ones that I mentioned just a few moments ago. One of the things that the ESV translators said that they wanted to do is they wanted to revise, update all of the archaic language in the, or from the KJV. That's always been one of the arguments, right? Look at some things that I make mention of down there. One of the things that they wanted to revise is the these and thous, okay? But look at point number 1. There have been many versions and many attempts to remove archaic language over the last 60 years or so, folks. 1952, the Revised Standard Version. 1966, Good News for Modern Man. 1971, the New American Standard Bible. 1973, the New International Version. 1978, the New Century Version. 1982, the New King James Version. 1985, the New Jerusalem Version. 1990, the New Revised Standard Version. 1996, the New Living Translation. 2002, the New English Standard Version. Goodness gracious! It just blows your mind. Okay, what do they say they want to do? We want to get rid of the archaic language. Here's my question. How many times are you going to attempt this? Guys, we have computers. We have all kinds of stuff today. You ought to be able to make one version, and update every archaic word in a version and never have to do it again. You know what? Never have to do it again. It's unbelievable.
I have 3 sons who went to college, and they all studied Shakespeare and all the other famous writers.
Sure.
And we tried to save books from year to year, and there's only about 5 years in their college education, and the classes would say you have to have something
Oh, absolutely.
And we did that with those three sons, buying them textbooks. And I mean, Shakespeare should be Shakespeare from the beginning.
You would think.
Bible should be.
You would think. Absolutely.
I think they probably didn't make money.
Notice point number 2 there. These versions have removed the these and thous. They've done a great job with that. Okay, and got that the first time. That's what blows your mind. Okay, they got all of these and thous. But this writer wonders why. One would think that the first modern version will remove all the archaic words and phrases, but this has not been done as of this date in any of the modern translations. Folks, every modern translation still has archaic language in it. What's the problem with archaic language? What's the problem with it? Okay?
And that's that.
Okay? But we do have a problem with it. Okay? We do. What's a satrap? What's a satrap? Somebody tell me what the meaning of a satrap is. Nobody knows what a satrap is. Okay? It's a ruler. Got one. One in what? 50 in here who knows what a satrap is. Okay? See, satrap is an archaic word. We don't know what it means. Okay? It would be better if you translated that ruler of some sort, right? So that you know prince or whatever it is, you would know what it is. Okay? The reason for removing archaic language is to make the text easier to understand, right? So I don't have to look up all these words and all these phrases. Now, my problem is this. The King James Version came along in 1611, and guess what? They were using 1611 language, right? They didn't apologize, and they didn't try to say, hey, we're trying to update the archaic language. The new translations come along and tell me, our desire is to update the archaic language, and then they don't. That's my problem. My question is, why don't you? You said you were. You've had... Look at all, guys, that little list right there, that doesn't even touch the hem of the garment on all the versions that have been made since 1952. There are over 100 new versions that have been translated since 1952. And they still haven't gotten all the archaic language corrected. I just ask what? Why? Why? You know, you've had 100 attempts. Why can't you get this right? And the ESV has some archaic language. Still uses the word Sheol. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 12. Okay, does that have several meanings? Sheol? Yeah, it can mean grave. It can mean the Hadean realm. Okay, afterlife. So Sheol has several different meanings. So you just put Sheol in there. Well, then I got to go look up the meaning. Then I got to choose which meaning fits in this particular passage, right? Satraps, prefects, betrothed. We don't use that word anymore, do we? Anybody in here had your daughter betrothed to anybody? No, we don't do that. Huh? Really? Y'all were? Ooh, man. Like I said, that's been a long time ago since we... guys, notice down here some of the old phrases. Now remember, the King James has the... I'm not saying... I've already given you a lesson where I've criticized and showed you the weakness of the King James. Okay, I did that the very first lesson where it had all these archaic words. But remember, the new translations come along and say we're going to update all this stuff. And they don't. Some old phrases of the King James are still retained. The ants are a people not strong. People? They're a people? See, they're not a people. And see, that's one of the arguments people use about the King James. You know, oh, that's a terrible translation of that word, people. Ants aren't people. Okay? I gave you cleanness of teeth in all your cities. Oh, so he passed out some toothbrushes, and so everybody got their toothbrushes. Cleanness, what does that mean? I gave you cleanness of teeth. Guess what he means? I gave you a famine. You couldn't get your teeth dirty. Okay? If you don't eat, you don't get your teeth dirty. They stay clean. Okay, but see, that's an old phrase, isn't it? I gave you cleanness of teeth. But when you understand it, oh, okay, I get it now, but I don't when I just initially read it. Okay? How about this one? And make their loins tremble continually. Their loins tremble continually. You know, that word loins is an old word, guys. Okay? And all these are in I just wonder why they can't get these words updated. Okay? I don't know. Okay? Notice that thirdly. There's poor grammar in the English Standard Version. Okay? I've given you the website where you can look up this article. An article entitled, Why the English Standard Version Should Not Become the Standard English Version. Mark L. Strauss discusses many of the difficulties of the English language found in the ESV. Okay? Apparently he's pretty linguistic as far as his, on English style. He knows English style well. He talks about awkward and unusual style, word order problems, run-on sentences, and mistranslated genitives. Many of those things you and I know absolutely nothing about much, do we? We wouldn't even recognize them, okay? Near the end of the article, he writes the following. It should be evident, however, that the ESV needs a major revision with reference to its English style. I would recommend that the ESV committee enlist English stylists to review the entire text carefully with an eye toward English idiom. Wow. And guys, the article that I've given you there, if you'll type in that website down there underneath that quote that I just gave you, it's about a 7 or 8, 10-page article. It's not just one or two little things. Okay, it's a long article where he has really gone in and looked at the English style and doesn't believe that it's that it doesn't contain a great standard when it comes to the English language. Notice this next point. This is interesting. Okay, are there versions out today who are going to gender neutrality? What's that mean? Gender neutrality.
Get rid of the male gender.
Okay, yes. We're trying to get, not just male. We don't want male and we don't want female. We just want people. Right? We don't have men. We don't have women. We just have people. Okay? And the New International Version has come out with an entire translation that is gender neutral. Okay? Jesus is no longer called the Son of God. Okay? What do you think He's called? The child of God. See, gender neutral. Yes, ma'am.
What is
Mary.
Mary called?
Okay. Now, the reason I bring this up is we're living in a world today that is hung up on gender, aren't we? We don't. Used to it was very clear there were only two genders: male, female. And folks, that's what the Bible teaches. There's two genders: male and female. That's all. Okay, but yet we're living in a society today where individuals are very hung up on this gender thing, and so these modern translations are trying to move into the realm of being gender neutral, so you don't offend anybody. Okay, Larry?
How do they deal with the Genesis account of male and female?
Oh, they would still say that, but when it comes to gender pronouns and other kind of words, that's where they fight the battles. Okay, they just let that say what it says, in there. But the ESV, it's not totally, completely gender neutral. But guess what? It is partially gender neutral. It is as if it is being used as a bridge to a gender neutral translation. Okay? Notice point B there. The ESV removes the words man and men 671 times in the translation. Folks, that's a bunch. That's a bunch. I've given you one example. King James Version says in Matthew 5:19, "Whosoever therefore shall break one of these commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven." See the word men? And teach men so? Here's the way it's translated in the ESV. "Therefore whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven." Get rid of men, put in what? Others. Okay? Others. Because that's gender what? Gender neutral. Okay, Barbara?
Is the LGBT
I don't think it's so much that there is a, what do you call it, a group within the organization that is pushing for this. But what I see is, what you have is you have editors and publishers. They're worldly people. And their concern is for one thing. What is that? To sell a Bible, folks. And so, if our society is moving in the direction of gender neutrality, then I need to make my book, my Bible, more gender neutral in order for it to what? Sell. If it's gender exclusive, men, oh, look at that. Okay? But if it's not men, it's others. It's not son, it's child, and things of that nature. Well, then they know they'll sell more versions of more copies of that particular version. Beverly?
The good news for modern men, I know that you got it out in 1966.
Mm-hmm.
I have that book, and there's a difference, like, Sylvia said, who was Mary called? Well, Mary in the King James is called a virgin. Well, there's a big difference in a virgin and a young woman.
Oh, yes. Right. That's where you get into the actual translation of the text itself. Sure is. Gil?
Well, in church, I've heard several times sermons when they talk about, like, teaching men. The teacher would say, mankind.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure it includes with
Right.
men, teach them.
Right. Yeah, we've moved away from what used to be anthropos used to be all-inclusive, man or women. Okay, but now we live in such a society that if you say man, everybody immediately thinks that you're talking about what? A male person, right? And that can't include anybody else. If you say man, that don't include women. Well, that's not true, folks. Okay, at least I tell you, it's going to be where it's not true one of these days. Okay, it's going to get so hot and heavy in our society. We got to go fast, guys. I'm not going to have time to talk about all this. Y'all going to be here for another month.
Do you think that gender neutrality is a result of the emphasis of the homosexual movement in America? I didn't hear what Barbara said.
That's what she asked. And what I told her is I don't think that they have necessarily a group inside the publishing company that's pushing for that. I just think the publishing company sees what's going on in the United States of America, and we got to move toward gender neutrality, okay? Rather, so that it'll be an accepted version of the Bible, so we'll sell more. Jeannie, bell's rung. Go ahead.
Is it wrong in some of these areas to specify that refers to mankind or people? I mean, some of the areas, it just talk about humanity, and based on our history to understand the Bible, is it wrong to say people?
Well, the problem is that there's no stopping point, okay? That's the problem. Anthropos means man, okay? And so now we put people. You really haven't translated the word at all, okay? So our translation is a little weaker. But then when you move from that to saying Jesus is just the child of God, see, now we've made another. Where do you ever stop in getting this gender neutrality? What they want is they want it all out. Okay. Now in the ESV, sometimes they're not consistent in their gender neutrality. Okay. I'll give you two examples. In Romans 3:28, the word anthropos is translated one instead of man. Okay? And in 1 Thessalonians 2:4, anthropos is translated man instead of something gender neutral. So they're not consistent throughout the entirety of the translation in making it a gender neutral translation. Okay? So just be aware that in many instances they've removed the word man and replaced it with some 671 times, folks. That shows me it's not just an occasional thing. 671 times is a lot of times, isn't it? Okay, they were being pretty intentional about trying to bring this gender neutrality into the text. I've noted for you some of the verses that are omitted from the English Standard Version. They are omitted in most of the modern versions. Why? Anybody remember why? Yes, they used a different text, Greek text from which to translate. The Westcott-Hort Greek text does not have these passages in them, okay? They are, the first one is omitted, it's just omitted. No footnote, no anything. Now that's in this particular, remember I said you have to be careful about what you're talking about? Okay, that's in this particular, because I went through and I checked every one of them, okay? That verse is omitted, no footnote in this version. They are omitted with a footnote in all of those verses that you see listed there. Okay? So you'll be reading Acts chapter 8:36, and then you'll just keep reading and you'll say Acts 38. Acts 8:37 is not there. But there'll be a F or 1 or 2 or whatever showing a footnote, and you go down to the bottom, it says Acts 8:37 is not in some of the older versions of this Bible. So they just drop it out of the text. Well, they've dropped every one of those verses out of the text. Okay, in this one right here. Okay, and then there are some verses that they bracket. In other words, you're reading down through there, you get to Mark chapter 16, beginning, you get to verse 8. There's a big bracket put in between. Okay, these verses are not included in the oldest manuscripts, the Sinaiticus and the Vaticanus. Okay, and then they still have the rest of the verses in the text. Okay, so all that does is cast doubt on what? Cast doubt on the text. Is this really supposed to be part of the text? Is this part of the Bible? Isn't it part of the Bible? You know, do most individuals know enough to make those kind of decisions? No, don't know enough to make those kind of decisions. It's very, very difficult. Notice point number 6, inconsistent translation of Hades in the RSV. Okay, is Hades in the King James Version, what word is used as the translation of Hades? Hell. Hell. Okay? Folks, that's not a good translation of the word Hades. Are Hades and hell different? Yes. The two places, there is Gehenna hell, and then there is torments in the Hadean realm, right? And so I would be fine if a version came along and rather than translate the word, they just write the word Hades. And let's explain the word Hades to individuals, okay? And they did that in many places in the King James Version. Take, for instance, Matthew 16:18. Remember, Jesus said, "And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Folks, the Greek word there is what? Hades, okay? The forces of the Hadean realm will never prevail against the church. Okay, the word Hades. But then they get to Acts 2:31 and they transliterate the word Hades in the text. Okay, they keep the word hell in Matthew 16:18. They use it as Hades in Acts 2 verse 31. An inconsistent translation of the word Hades. I wish they would just use, guess what? Hades, and just leave it alone. Okay, and then let's explain what the Hadean realm really is. Okay, wow, I got a lot more that we need to go over, so we'll just wait till next week. And I'm going to do 2 more versions. I'm going to do the NIV, and I'm going to do the New American Standard Version. The reason I'm doing these 5 are because they're very popular in the Church of Christ. Okay, and then after I get through with those, I'm done. Okay, I'm done. Thank you, thank you.